Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good evening. Let me know in the chat that you can hear and see me. I see you guys already chatting already, which is great. We'll get going, hopefully. Got it. Thank you, Lauren. Welcome to Omaha Public Library's virtual book bash. I'm Erin Dewar. I'm the Readers and Writers Librarian for OPL, and I'm going to be your host and MC this evening. Before we get going, I have a bit of housekeeping. So a lot of you have already found the chat. That's great. Please use that throughout the evening to let everybody know how they're doing and what you're excited about. Chat amongst yourselves as well. You also might see comments in there from Amy Mather, who is OPL's Adult Services Manager. She's in there to answer your questions. She's also going to be dropping you helpful links throughout the night and posting links to our book list that will have all the titles that we're talking about. So you can just go straight to the catalog and place them on hold. You will also see the Ask a Question. If you have a question for a book talker or something specific, you can put it there. Amy or I will get to it, or we will answer it at the end of the evening. Also, shortly after I get done talking here, you're going to see a button pop up in the middle that says enter here to win prizes. That is for our giveaway for the evening. We have 10 prizes. 5 of those are book bundles. So there you're going to get a couple new or forthcoming titles. And you're also going to get a copy of the Omaha Reads book, You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey by Amber Ruffin and Lacey Lamar. If you can see it, it's above my shoulder. 5 people will get those bundles. We also have 3 $25 gift cards to the Bookworm and 2 $25 gift cards to Dundee Book Company. So this is our third book bash. I think probably some of you are repeat attendees. We hosted our first one in February 2020. It was in person down here at Main Library. It was a little bit like speed dating. We had snacks and drinks. And this is our second virtual book bash. Our first was in February this year. So this is our best approximation of what that live event would be on a virtual platform. So our end goal is the same. We hope you walk away with a list of books that you're excited to read and that you get to chat, at least virtually, with other attendees, and that you're excited about some of the OPL programs and services that you hear about tonight. So I see someone's been to all 3. That's awesome, Jenny. Once I'm done talking, you're going to hear from 6 OPL staff members. You might hear me call these folks book talkers. Each book talker is going to spend 8 to 10 minutes telling you about a handful of books that they're really excited about. These books might be new or old or forthcoming. They're definitely going to be different genres. You'll be able to see those covers as each person talks throughout the night. And when you see those covers, there's going to be a little blue circle in the right corner that has the page number that they are in if you were able to pick up a book bash booklet from your branch. If not, Amy will drop a link to our whole book list, so you can just go straight to the catalog. A couple things that you are going to hear about tonight. The OPL Reading Challenge. This is a group of 12 challenges to help you broaden your reading horizons. You'll find info about those challenges on the OPL website, or you might have already picked up a book club or a reading challenge booklet at your branch. There's one right behind me. Book talkers might recommend titles for specific challenges. Second service you might hear about is OPL's book bag collection. So these are titles that we have curated specifically for book clubs. Each book club bag has 10 to 12 copies of a title along with a discussion guide, and you can check these out just like any other item and use them with your own book club. And last thing, you might hear about OPL's podcast, The Book Drop. This is a regular podcast hosted by OPL staff, almost all of whom are in this group tonight. If you're not familiar, the Book Drop is each week we talk about a new genre or topic from the book world and share our love of reading. So we're 60 episodes in. So if you're looking for a book podcast, we've got you covered for a while. You can find more information about the podcast on OPL's website, or just search for The Book Drop on your favorite podcast app. So tonight, the book talkers might mention that they're part of the Book Drop team, or they might reference books that were mentioned on the podcast, as this is one of the reading challenge categories this year. So you're going to hear from first 3 book talkers, and then we're going to do a short intermission, maybe 5 to 7 minutes. I'll let you know how long it's going to be when we get there. And then we will come back. We'll do the last 3 book talkers, and then we will close out with our giveaways and any questions you guys might have for the evening. So that is it for my big, long spiel. I'm going to bring in Melanie, our first book talker. So give me just 1 second, and we will get going.
Hello, everyone. I'm Melanie Feierheim-Schultz, a collection development librarian at W. Dale Clark Main Library, and I'm excited to kick us off with something that is just a quick, heartwarming read, How to Love the World, Poems of Gratitude and Hope, edited by James Cruz. This includes poems by Amanda Gorman, Joy Harjo, Ross Gay, Tracy K. Smith, Nebraska's own Ted Kuzer, and so many more. Cruz began work on collecting poems for this book in January 2020, and while he began with the focus of collecting poems on joy and gratitude, as the pandemic began, he ended up switching it more to hope. As he says in the intro, these poets know that hope, no matter how slight it might seem, is as pressing a human need right now as food, water, shelter, or rest. So it's fitting then that the first poem in this book is titled Hope. Some of the poems will definitely be identifiable as having been written in 2020 with titles like Shelter in Place and After Spending the Morning Baking Bread or Today When I Could Do Nothing. But there are a lot of timeless poems in here as well that make you think of appreciating the little things, focusing on the present, and finding small joys. Throughout the collection, Cruz provides moments where the reader can take what he's labeled as a reflective pause to think more about the poems that they just read and write up a little reflection if you'd like. And I really enjoyed that aspect because it's not really something I've seen done in poetry books. The end of the book provides even more reading group questions and discussion topics, and that's why the library decided that this would make a great book club bag. So we will have it in that format soon if you want to get your book club to read it, and we also have it in our collection as a regular print book. This book would obviously work for the Read a Book of Poetry challenge, for the reading challenge this year. Continuing on with another short collection, this time of short stories, I want to talk about The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans. I devoured this book. The writing was just so compelling and I couldn't put it down. Evans has such a great way of writing racial tension and nuances and making you feel one way about a character and then a page later unveiling something that can start to make you think a totally different way. I was particularly struck by the short story, Anything Could Disappear. In this, a woman is sitting on a bus with another passenger who has a 2-year-old and another child behind her. And this woman asks if she can leave the 2-year-old on the seat next to Vera, the main character. And the woman heads to the back of the bus with the other child. At a stop, Vera gets off, uses the restroom, comes back. The child is still there. They reach their final destination, and Vera begins to realize that the mother and the other child are no longer on the bus. I can't say too much about what happens next without spoiling, but it's something that most people would find baffling until another layer of Vera's story is revealed, and you start to wonder if maybe for her sake she made the right decision after all. The title story, Office of Historical Corrections, is a novella that's focused on a field agent of the Institute for Public History, which is essentially this nationwide group of fact checkers who work on a certain type of public health bad information. So it is their job to inform people when they see things worded in historically inaccurate ways on plaques or flyers by putting these little correction stickers on them and informing the business owner or whoever might be responsible, which the field agent does in the opening of the story by letting a baker know that a Juneteenth cake would not actually be celebrating the anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. This field agent ends up flying to Wisconsin to take on an historical possible murder mystery that could end up costing her her job. There are characters in this collection that have stuck with me ever since I read this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the author writes next. This actually won the 2021 Joyce Carol Oates Prize, so it would work for the award winner challenge, and we have this in book, ebook, and e-audiobook. My next book, Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. I wouldn't be surprised if a number of you have heard of it or read this one already, since it was a Reese's Book Club pick earlier this year. The author has beautiful lyrical prose, and this story was just heart-wrenching and powerful. I will admit, at the time I was reading this book, it seemed like every book I was picking up had a multiple point of view, and I was getting a little tired of it, but I stuck it out, and I was so intrigued with all of the narrators here, which isn't always the case with a multiple point of view. So in this story, Talia has just broken out of reformatory for girls in Colombia so that she can find her father and get on a plane to the US where her mother and siblings are. You find out that years ago, her father and mother had a child and shortly after moved to America in hopes for a better life. They overstayed their visas and had 2 more children, including Talia, while living in the US. But then an event happens and Mauro, Talia's father, is deported. The mother, Elena, makes a heartbreaking decision to send young Talia back to Colombia to live with Elena's mother. The story weaves together the past and present as we learn more about their stories both in America and Colombia. There's a lot of talk of the connection to the Colombian land and ancestors as we follow along to find out whether this whole family will ever be back together again. This works for multiple reading challenges, the Immigrant and Refugee Challenge, multiple points of view, and it was also mentioned on the Book Drop podcast. And we have this in pretty much every format: book club bag, ebook, e-audiobook, print, large print, and audio on CD. Whereabouts is a story written by American author Jhumpa Lahiri, who has given us incredible works like The Namesake, The Lowland, and the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction winner Interpreter of Maladies. A few years ago, the author decided to follow her passion of the Italian language and moved herself and her family to Italy and began studying the language and writing solely in Italian. So she wrote this novel in Italian and then later decided to translate it herself into English. For anyone who has read her other works, you'll find something a bit different here than her previous fiction books, but no less engaging. The story focuses on a middle-aged Italian professor, and you experience picturing this woman as her day-to-day life unfolds in a city which is never actually mentioned in the book, but Lahiri has said that she had Rome in mind while she was writing it. Lahiri's beautiful prose and introspective narration do not seem to get lost in any kind of translation. I will say that for those who read for plot, this is probably not your book, as it really is just like a look inside one woman's mind through these little vignettes as she moves throughout her day and sort of relates to her solitude. But if you love introspective characters and setting and want to dream about being in Rome, then this is definitely one to check out. And I could see this matching well for fans of Kathleen Rooney's Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk or Sigrid Nunez's The Friend. We have this in print book, large print, ebook, e-audiobook, and playaway. Wintering, The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times by Catherine May. I know it probably seems very odd to be talking about winter right now in this heat of August, but when you get into it and start reading it, I think you'll understand. So May takes us from September through late March and provides this memoir and in some cases almost a travelogue as she explores the ways that certain cultures both prepare for and get through the long winter months. But in this book, she's really not just talking about literal months, even though that is how she's organized it. She also refers to wintering as times in our lives when we need to sort of slow down and change course, if there's been an illness or injury or some other kind of life event that may warrant taking a step back from your typical pace. For anyone who read For Small Creatures Such as We that I talked about at the last book bash, I think that you'll like this one too, as it evokes this similar sense of connection to nature with a much more meditative feel. I really enjoyed how she would discuss these things along with the context of taking us on her journeys through Europe to include different wintering holidays, rituals, and activities like Hallowmas, the Sancta Lucia Festival, Stonehenge on the winter solstice, hot geothermal waters in Reykjavik, cold water or ice swimming, and seeing the northern lights above the Arctic Circle. I found this to be a really soothing book to explore. I actually listened to it on audiobook and really liked it in that format. There's a lot in here on self-acceptance, rest, being kind to yourself, taking things slow, all good things. We have this in book, downloadable audiobook, and ebook. And finally, my last book, The Final Revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. If you loved Taylor Jenkins Reid's Daisy Jones and the Six and Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and have wished for a book that combines the two into something possibly even more irresistible, then this is the book for you. Walton's debut novel gives us a rock oral history set in both 1970s and near present, following Opal Jewell, an Afro-punk singer from Detroit, and Nev Charles, the redheaded British musician who becomes Opal's partner. Then there is Sunny, a music journalist and editor working on the story of Opal and Nev's potential reunion, as well as trying to unravel the history of the band and what led to Sunny's father, the drummer for Opal and Nev, to be killed during a riot at one of their shows, and how the secret behind this event could have major impacts on their lives. The result is a wild and impactful ride of a multiple point of view story touching on music history and journalism, the 1970s, feminism, African American history, and the racial tension both in the past as well as fast forwarding into today's current events as well. There's also a great large cast of characters to follow, from Opal's friend and stylist to their music producer, staff at the record studio, Opal's sister, and more. And when you get to the moment in the book of eventually being able to discover all that unfolded the night of the riot, it is such an explosive read. I just continue to be surprised that a celebrity book club did not pick this one up, as I think there's so much to explore and unpack here. So this book works for the reading challenge, multiple points of view, and possibly a person you'd like to meet, because Opal, the character, is just a phenomenal powerhouse woman. So this we have in book, ebook, and both the digital and CD audiobook, which I've actually heard is the way to go because it has a full cast of characters covering those multiple points of view. So those are my books. I hope you heard something that you might be interested in checking out. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Melanie.
Oh, shit.
Hi, Jake.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I have seen that my camera is having difficulty. Is that?
Sorry, folks. Give us one sec. I can go on to Anna.
Yes, please.
Okay. We will bring Jake back in a minute. Anna, I'm going to bring you up. You're good to go. Thanks,
All right.
Anna.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Anna Wilcoxon. I am the Diversity and Inclusion Librarian for OPL, and I am based out of the South Omaha branch, typically. And I'm also on the podcast. So if you recognize my voice, you might be a podcast listener. So I am excited to talk to you about some great books I've read in the last year. The first one I want to recommend is called Dear Senthurin, a Black Spirit Memoir by Akweke Emezi. It came out in 2021. If you're doing the reading challenge, for me, they would be someone that I'd really like to meet. They have really great style, so I want to see what they would wear for our date. And they also just have a really fascinating and unique mind. So yeah, and we have this available in print format at OPL. So I find them to be a really intense and astonishing writer. They won't be for everyone, but if they're for you, they are really for you, and you might become a little bit obsessed. So this book is visceral and thought-provoking, and it takes the form of letters written to people close to the author. So they could be best friends, an acquaintance from the literary world, an ex-partner, all kinds of folks. So these letters all speak to the nature of those relationships, but they also reference much bigger topics that many people can relate to. The pains and rewards of success, the pains and rewards of like finding your true identity and leaning into that and becoming who you really are. And also they talk about the current state of the literary world and the publishing world. So it kind of gives you like an inside view on their journey from their first book getting published to this might be their fourth or fifth book. So it's interesting to watch to see their perspective on that world too. They delve into their experiences as a non-binary Black trans person who is also living as a god trapped in a human body, which is what they believe due to their Igbo faith. Again, this might be challenging for some people, but I love their audacity. And I feel like this book feels like a manifesto of their vision of the world and their philosophy towards life. I feel like they're just such a confident and powerful writer that it kind of, like, the more I read this book, I just kind of felt like this person, if they really wanted to, could summon a whole new world into existence just through the power of language. So if you've read their other books, this is an important piece of their canon, and it's instrumental in better understanding their identity. I do want to give a content warning for really blunt speech about mental health, body dysmorphia, and suicide. That's Dear Santhurin, a Black Spirit memoir by Akweke Emezi. My next pick is On Juneteenth by Annette Gordon-Reed. This also came out last year. We have this in print, ebook, and downloadable audiobook formats. So here we have Native Texan and historian Annette Gordon-Reed offering us a brief book of reflections on Juneteenth. So this is national and personal history written in a really engaging style. If you don't know about Juneteenth, it's only really beginning to become recognized on a larger level. It just became a federal holiday this past year, 2021. Just so you know what it is, on June 19th, 1865, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, enslaved people in Texas were finally set free through federal military intervention. There were still 250,000 Black people being kept as slaves at this time. So the author combines history and memoir in 5 little essays in this short book. She was the first Black student to integrate schools in her hometown. So one of the most powerful stories to me was that experience. And throughout the book, she delves into the meaning of being Black in Texas, the impact of Black people on the state of Texas and their importance in the history of the state, and also what Juneteenth means to her and her family in general. So I found that she really struck a perfect balance, like a really difficult balance between critique and sentimentality. She loves Texas and she loves being a Texan, but she doesn't let that cloud the facts of history or her observations. As she says in the book, love does not require taking an uncritical stance toward the object of one's affections. Next up, I have Nature Poem by Tommy Pico. This came out in 2017. If you're doing the reading challenge, you could use this for 3 different challenges. It's a book of poetry. It's also written by a Native American author, and it's mentioned on the podcast. So we have it in print and ebook format, and it consists of a single format bending poem that runs about 70 pages. So this book was super fun to read. I didn't want to put it down. So Pico is a queer Native American living in New York. And this book really fights against the stereotype of all Native Americans, having a connection to the land, and reminds readers that not every Native person lives on a reservation or is in like constant communication with the natural world. He's a proud and defiant city dweller who doesn't want to reference nature just because he's Native. And he doesn't even really like it. There's some really funny parts in this book where he talks like quite a bit of trash about nature. He's definitely like a city kid. So he uses poetry to acknowledge and attack these stereotypes towards Native Americans. The big theme of the book is reconciling colonialism and its horrors with his current lived experience and identity. And it's about pushing back against the boxes that other people might try to push you into. It's really snarkily insightful, and funny. It's full of references to Twitter and pop music, and this is edgy, humorous, and thought-provoking poetry. It's a really fun read. My next pick is In Every Mirror She's Black by Lola Akinmade Akerstrom, and this one is not quite out yet. It comes out in just a few weeks, I think the beginning of September. We do have it available in our catalog to place holds on now if it piques your interest. So if you're doing the reading challenge, this is mentioned on the podcast. It's told from multiple points of view, and one of those points of view is from the perspective of a refugee character. So you could also use this one for the refugee/immigrant experience challenge. We have this in print format available now to put a hold on, and it will probably have it in other ones too after it gets actually published. So this is literary fiction that explores what it means to be a Black woman from different points of view. It's very character-driven and it's bittersweet, and it really intensifies in pace and action as the story goes on. It gets more and more compulsive to read. So we have our rich main character, or kind of not main character. He's the reason the 3 women are the main characters. He's like the fulcrum that they kind of cycle around. So We have a rich, neurodivergent white Swedish man. His name is Johnny, and he's the reason these three women all intersect and impact each other's lives in some unexpected ways. So one is like a best-in-her-class American marketing executive who's recruited by Johnny to move to Sweden and work for his ailing PR firm to help them recover from a public relations disaster. Another one is an American stewardess who he meets on a flight, and he becomes infatuated with her, and that has some very mixed results. And the final woman we meet is a Somali refugee named Muna, and she finds employment in Sweden cleaning Johnny's offices. So through this circle of connections, we explore race, class, and culture, and themes of navigating like unknown and unwelcoming environments are kind of resonating throughout the book. The author really excels at creating really complex characters who feel very real. The parts of the story that are told from Muna's perspective, in particular the refugee character, are some of the most kind of heartbreaking and illuminating refugee perspectives that I've ever read. So yeah, Nevermore She's Black by Lola Akanmari Akerstrom. My next pick is Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. I saw that someone was reading this, or I just read it in the chat. I was like, yes. This came out in 2020. We have this available in pretty much every format, including a book club bag, and it would be amazing for a book club pick. There's so much to talk about and unpack, and I think you could have some really fascinating and enlightening conversations based upon this book. So essentially, this book illuminates how we got to the divided America that we find ourselves in today. Wilkerson explores how social hierarchies has evolved over time to become sneakier and more embedded, and she combines sociology, politics, history, and her own lived experience as a Black woman to extremely memorable effect. She dispels the myth that this is just the way things are and how they have to be. So you'll read striking comparisons throughout. She kind of uses comparisons between the US, Nazi Germany, and the caste system of India. And I learned so many things in this book. I feel like I need to read it maybe one more time to fully get everything out of it. And I wish really maybe every adult American would read this book. I found it so informative. It really unpacks the invisible rules that so many of us subconsciously live by. And it gives a really powerful voice to that collective loss and disservice we do ourselves and our society by not examining this and by not challenging the status quo. So this is nonfiction, but it is absolutely not like a dry historical read. Wilkerson's writing is so compelling, like the narrative just propels forward like you're reading a book of fiction. It's thought-provoking and really thoroughly researched and a really important book. My last pick is World of Wonders by Amy Nizuku-Mutado. This came out in 2020, and we have it in print and ebook format. If you're doing the reading challenge, this would fit a few different categories of your choosing. It's a book about animals. It was mentioned on the podcast, and it's also a book with illustrations. You can kind of see the cover is really beautiful. This is a book of little short essays, and the break between each essay is punctuated by an illustration of the plant or animal that the author is talking about, and it's really lovely. So the author's a poet, and this is a short book of essays, as I mentioned, and it's full of really like lyrical and thoughtfully paced writing that's a mix of memoir and nature writing. So she uses a plant or an animal as a jumping off point for each of her essays, and we take it from there. So the author is the daughter of an Indian dad and a Filipina mom, and they were both medical professionals, which resulted in them moving around a lot when she was a child. So a way that she found to stay like grounded and to find comfort in sometimes unwelcoming or unfamiliar environments was through her connection to nature. So quite a few anecdotes are about identity, like being a brown girl in a white person's world, and also about motherhood. She has 2 young sons that she talks about in the book a bit too. So I felt like these short stories create just a really soothing connection between human experiences and the characteristics of different plants or animals. And they do so in a way that make us seem like maybe we're not as different as we think we might be. The writing's really full of tender observations and appreciation for all of the strange and weird and beautiful things that creatures do and how they live. So I finished this with like a renewed sense of appreciation for all the all the types of creatures in this world and plants. And just I felt more connected to the world after reading this book. So if the idea of relating to a dragon fruit or a whale shark sounds appealing to you, you should really read this book. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anna. Okay, Jake, I'm bringing you back. No, okay.
No, oh, I'm so
It's
sorry,
okay.
everyone.
It's okay, Jake. We'll go without your video, okay?
All right.
Okay.
So,
Keep that sound.
yeah, that should work then. My name is Jacob Lee. I am the Omaha Public Library. I'm a subject librarian at the Millard Branch Library. And the first book I'm going to talk about tonight is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This book, I specifically chose it as it kind of fits a lot of different factors that we were looking forward to talking tonight. And I was really interested in it after I read a synopsis. So Nora, the main character, is a 30-somethings piano teacher who, incidentally, at the very beginning, loses her only student. And she also works in a music instrument store, which she subsequently gets fired. Her mom, she is a mother to a cat, and unfortunately that cat just died in an accident. And throughout all that, she just finds herself lost, alone, and just full of regret. And inevitably, and I don't want to give too much away, she eventually finds herself inside the Midnight Library, where time stands still and there is a infinite number of possibilities, as she is joined with her childhood librarian, who helps guide her through the multiverse of lives that could have been. So every decision that she could have ever made in her life, where it divulges from her current path, is a book for her. And there's just something really beautiful, I think, about that sort of exploration, that if we were all given that opportunity, how far would we go? How many lives would we live? It asks a lot of questions there. It's a very quick read. It's only like a little over 200 pages. I find it, some people have complained about its pacing. I found its pacing to actually be very good in the sense that it lulls you in. And then there are moments of panic and frustration, and you're with Nora kind of throughout the whole ride. So there's a lot of allegory and idioms in here as well. Matt Haig wrote a biography that is kind of also kind of a self-helpy book. So it's really just kind of the whole book is just really about finding yourself, and I loved it. My next book is Questland by Carrie Vaughn. So this was released in June of this year, so it's very early, a very new book, and it is in many ways similar to Ready Player One. So if any of you have read Ready Player One, this is like the Ready Player One for role-playing nerds. You might notice there's a lot of fantasy motifs. So this particular book kind of falls under an emerging genre called lit RPG or game lit, in which a set of characters within some sort of subgenre go on a quest, but they're all trapped inside of a game of some kind. And so the book really recognizes that. And so there's gamified things in the book that you kind of have to pull from. But a quick synopsis, sometimes you just can't escape your past, because literature professor Dr. Addie Cox in this book has discovered that she is practically conscripted into joining a group of mercenaries who are attempting to take back this fantasy island called Insula Mirabilis, which is from Latin, and it means miraculous island. And they utilize a combination of advanced technology and biology to create a full immersive fantasy world that is intended to be like the Lord of the Rings meets Jurassic Park. And unfortunately, her ex-boyfriend was the one who incidentally was the head designer, and he has shut off the park from anyone else. And it has caused almost an international incident, as a few people died from that incident. And so she is going in with these mercenaries to take back the island, and craziness happens. If you're a fan of Tolkien, there's a lot of Tolkien in this book, or discussions on mythology, different mythological creatures. There's a lot of nerdness in this book. It's super fun. It's pretty fast pace. I feel like Carrie Vaughn doesn't spend a lot of time on any one specific moment, but she just keeps the story on moving. And there's this amazing moment early on where the character breaks down after seeing a real life unicorn. And I gotta say, I felt it. Like if I was in that moment, yeah, 100%, I would be crying tears of joy. For my next book, we have The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. I should mention, and I apologize, for Questland, we only have that available as a print book. And Midnight Library is available in a ton of formats. Really needs no introduction, but I thought it was a good one. Anywho, The Art of Gathering. So this is a culmination of hundreds of hours that Priya Parker has transformed into this particular title that is meant to help you understand the purpose and value of why you are meeting in the first place. We've all been to meetings where there essentially could have been an email. I mean, I guess that's the old joke. So what I kind of pulled away from this book is that Parker offers a bunch of examples of why certain things fail or why gatherings fail, just because they don't have any sort of purpose that is meaningful in some way. I mean, sure, we all like to hang out with our friends and family, but is there a greater purpose there? Sometimes, yes, we're just hanging out, but I mean, really, it's Christmas gatherings, religious gatherings, the whole thing. It really, Priya Parker helps you understand that maybe there is a purpose to this. Maybe there is something you can be doing with this to help elevate it. And I know I am going to incorporate a lot of what I learned from The Art of Gathering into my own gatherings. So this is available as a print book, an ebook, and a downloadable audiobook. I just loved it. So The Art of Gathering. My fourth book is from a local author, Liz Kay, which I thought was awesome. And so for those of you in the reading challenge, this book is also set in Nebraska, which is fantastic. And it contains a lot of fun references to different things in the area. I should, just as a warning, there's a lot of cursing and drinking in this particular book. But in a tale as old as time, an Omaha poet whom has been recently widowed has written a book in verse retelling the story of Frankenstein, but with a little bit more of a feminist theme. And then a young and rich Californian actor who is known for his promiscuous lifestyle, he wants to make that book into a movie. Well, one thing leads to another, and these two people who are messes, frankly, end up in a relationship and things get kind of hot and heavy. But over time, the logistics of a relationship halfway across the country really can wreak havoc on it. And life gets messy, and indecision can be your worst enemy. But Monsters is arguably a story about the ways in which love can bring out both the best and worst parts in us. It's just good, honest dialogue. I think for me, that's the thing that struck me the most is how real I felt the moments from time to time, because life isn't always eloquent. That's Monsters, a love story. And I will leave you with my favorite book for this year, The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. It was released in May 25th, and I love it. This book was everything that I wanted out of a grimdark fantasy title. So just to let you know, this is not a fun, happy story. This is, if you've ever read Joe Abercrombie's The Blade Itself, or maybe Robin Hobb's Assassin's Apprentice, actually, it is a little bit more Robin Hobb, a little less Joe Abercrombie. But and for those of you who may not know what grimdark means, it's a genre of fantasy fiction, of course, that's typically characterized by disturbing, violent, or bleak subject matter and a dystopian setting. Game of Thrones is a perfect example for those of you who may have watched Game of Thrones, but this is supposed to be the beginning of a trilogy, so that's exciting. However, I think you can read this one by itself. If you didn't want to go any further, I think this is a good standalone title. So it's the story of Kinch Nashanik, Good old fantasy names. A fledgling thief with a literal black tongue who is just about to pay down his debts to a thieving guild that essentially has given his livelihood to him, but owes a pretty large amount. And in a highway robbery gone wrong, right at the beginning of the book, he's suddenly sent on a quest with a dark and mysterious knight and her giant attacking raven, who has pledged her life as a handmaiden to the goddess of death. They are searching for a missing queen who has narrowly escaped the siege of her castle by giants and a terror that has blighted the land for years. Goblins. Kinch and his companions must use every ounce of luck and martial prowess that they have to survive and rescue this monarch. So that's the Black Tongue Thief. The dialogue in this is amazing, and I can't recommend it enough. I love it. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. Okay, that is we're going to come up on our intermission. Thanks for sticking with us through our technical difficulties. I feel like it's not a virtual book bash if we don't have like a hot mic minute. So we're going to take, let's say, a 7-minute break, which is going to be on by our clock, 7:48. So we'll be back in 7 minutes. I'm going to, I popped in the prize drawing button at the bottom. So please get your entries in. I will pull those after the first book talker after the break. So we will take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, folks, and we are back. I'm going to bring up our next book talker. Michelle is going to join us. You are good to go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second half. Hopefully you'll get some really great recommendations again. Hi, I'm Michelle Carlson, book club librarian and one of the co-hosts of the Book Drop podcast. I can usually be found at the Willa Cather branch. I'm excited to talk about this first book because she's kind of a local author. So the book I'm talking about is Make Your Home Among Strangers by Janine Capo-Crusette. She was raised in Miami, Florida, but is now an associate professor in the Department of English in the Institute of Ethnic Studies at the University of Nebraska. And so in this, her first fiction novel, she writes about Lizette, the daughter of Cuban immigrants and the first in her family to graduate from high school. After secretly applying and getting accepted into an ultra-elite college in New York, her parents are furious at her decision to leave Miami. To make leaving for this next chapter of her life even more complicated, her parents divorce and her father sells their house, leaving Lizette, her mother, her sister Leedy, and her new nephew Dante without a steady income or a home. Lizette's first semester is a rough transition as she realizes her school did not prepare her for the rigor and standards of college papers. So on a surprise trip home at Thanksgiving to, find some solace for herself, the fraught relationship between Lizette, her family, and her boyfriend is fully exposed. At the same time, the story of a little Cuban boy whose mother died trying to get him to the U.S. dominates the community. This is set in the late 90s, so you might remember a familiar tale that dominated our news at that time too. And Lizette's mom becomes obsessed with this case. So this book examines how Lizette is pulled between life at college and the needs of those she loves at home, and truly how Lizette is faced with those difficult decisions that come with that turn from young adult to adult, and how all of these things will change her life. I love this book for Crusette's honest and reflective depictions of the culture shock, confusion, guilt, and humiliations of the first-generation college student while surrounded by privilege and people who do not understand you and unfortunately are unwilling to. I was also drawn into the story by the realistic and tense dialogue. You feel every moment, and you get to know Lizette through her thoughts and actions, which you might not always agree with. So if you are interested in social commentary along with a compelling story, I recommend Make Your Home Among Strangers by Janine Capo-Crusette. It is available in print, audio, and ebook formats. This will also fill a couple of reading challenges. Read a book about a refugee or immigrant experience, or read a book that won an award. This won the 2016 International Latino Book Award. So for my next pick, written in 2018 but surged to popularity last summer, I Am Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown is a must read. One of Brown's opening stories is about a terrible but formative interaction with a public librarian doubting that she is Austin Channing Brown. Not just because she is a girl named Austin, but because she is a Black girl. So right away, I was hooked and needed to learn more about her experiences. In really sobering prose, she relates anecdotes that describe the destructiveness of white supremacy embedded within American institutions. Brown is a Christian and works for a Christian organization. She describes the deep connection between race relations and Christian communities and how the latter needs to play a larger role in racial reconciliation. In a call to action, Brown urges readers to live the professed ideals rather than simply state them. A call to action that I think we all need to hear right now. So candid, edifying, and essential. This is a must read for those interested in racial justice or looking for a great book club pick. There's just a lot to discuss and get out of this book, and it's available in print, ebook, downloadable audiobook, and a book club kit. That way you can check out a bunch of copies and discuss with your friends. And I would also say this is a perfect companion to read with our 2021 Omaha Reads pick, You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey by Amber Ruffin and Lacey Lamar. Okay, so next one I have So, friends, do you believe in the multiverse, that there are parallel worlds creating multiple universes? And would you take the opportunity to travel across the multiverse? So, in The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson, in true sci-fi fashion, the technology was built to allow people to jump between worlds. The caveat, because always with technology there is, you can only travel to worlds in which you have already died. So in this novel, we meet Kara, a traverser, who grew up in the wastelands outside the main city, where it's a struggle to survive each day. Hence why her counterparts in other universes are more likely to be dead when she jumps into their world. So when Kara is sent to a world where her counterpart has died under mysterious circumstances, she finds a new realm that contains a secret. One that will force her to make choices that will not only reveal some of her own past and determine her future security, but will also affect the whole multiverse. This exciting novel is intelligently built with clever characters, surprise twists. Oh my God, there were so many, and lots of action. And the whole plot highlights social and racial inequities, and highly recommend. So for fans of Recursion by Blake Crouch or N.K. Jemison's The Fifth Season, or if you're looking for something that is action-packed, thought-provoking, and thoroughly compelling, check out this science fiction thriller, The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. It's available in print, ebook, and downloadable audiobook. Okay. My last three books that I'm going to talk about were all published this year in 2021, in case that's something that you're looking for, or also if you want to save them for next year's top shelf challenge, because most likely I'm going to be nominating them for that. So my first one here is Love is an Ex-Country by Randa Jarrar, a compelling autobiography by Palestinian American writer and controversial tweeter, Randa Jarrar, that delves into the issues of race, gender and sexuality, trauma, and female embodiment. Queer, Muslim, Arab American, a proudly fat woman, Randa Jarrar identifies as all of these things. Inspired by Tahia Carioca, the legendary Eastern dancer, Jarrar uses a road trip to process and reflect on her identity and past. In the summer of 2016, Jarrar drove cross-country from California to her parents' home in Connecticut. This memoir and essay discusses the details of that trip, the good, the bad, the infuriating, and the insightful. With many scenes that you will soon not forget, including one at a book fair in Tunisia, Jarrar explores how to claim joy in an unraveling and hostile America. Jarrar makes a significant statement about self-acceptance while celebrating the complexity of intersecting identities. I recommend this to fans of In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado or Hunger by Roxane Gay. And I would also say it's another companion to You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey. Provocative, intimate, and well-suited for reading in pieces because it is broken up into kind of little essays. I encourage you to pick up Love is an Ex-Country. And next I have, Are You in the Mood for a Dark Comedy? So in this moving and bizarre story of Nobody, Somebody, Anybody by Kelly McClory, we meet Amy Hanley, an ambitious and troubled young woman. She has recently taken a job as a chambermaid at a posh Massachusetts country club after failing her AMT exam twice. In preparation to not fail a third time, she administers a self-made placebo treatment. This includes things like sending herself a fake congratulations letter and ordering an EMT uniform to wear around her apartment. Not too weird and kind of sounds like a good idea, right? However, lying to yourself is one thing, but then Amy pulls others into her lies and builds a complicated web with her landlord, her family, and her coworkers. This might not be a character you want to meet, but learning about Amy's fraught relationship with her mother and seedy past with her college roommate will open your eyes to her motivations. If you are interested in exploring grief and self-forgiveness in a darkly humorous, character-driven literary fiction novel, pick up Nobody, Somebody, Anybody by Kelly McClory. And finally, one of my absolute favorite reads too this year has been Blackout by Donnell Clayton, Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Ashley Woodfolk, Angie Thomas, and Nicola Yoon. These authors have written some of the best young adult novels in the past few years and have now collaborated to create a collection of interlinked short stories. At this time, we might be a bit sick of power outages, but what if we focus on the magic and romance that comes when all the lights go out? So various friends and couples are on their way to a block party in Brooklyn when a blackout hits the city. Our main story is about Tammy and Kareem, her ex-boyfriend. They unexpectedly arrive at an internship that they have each been offered, but come to learn that there's only one spot. So thus begins their long walk from Harlem to the party in Brooklyn. Interspersed between their journey are tales of their family and friends and their own unique relationships, some that are beginning, some that are ending. And as each teen makes their way home, this joyful collaboration brings necessary elation to stories of Black love, queer love, and alternate forms of affection, ultimately evoking the warmth of greater connection, community, and belonging. Absolutely heartwarming and charming, it's a celebration of love in all of its forms. If you are a fan of contemporary romances, or feel like you've lost your way or your heart during these difficult times, let Blackout by these powerhouse authors reignite your spark. Thank you, friends. I hope you found some books that you like, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, next up we've got David. You're good to go, David.
All right. Hello, my name is David Dick. I'm a specialist at the Milton R. Abrahams branch and sometimes at Benson. I am one of the hosts of the Book Drop, OPL's podcast. And so all the books I discussed tonight can be used for the reading challenge for a book mentioned on the Book Drop. So here we go. First book that I'm going to talk about is Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. It is a compelling and thought-provoking African futurist science fiction novella. It's not Afro-futurist, it's African futurist. The author is very clear about that. About a young girl in Ghana who gains vast destructive powers at the expense of her family, her memory, and her identity. She must navigate life as a wandering outcast, where she's both hated and revered as like a religious figure. It's a good book to read for the reading challenge for a book about the refugee and immigrant experiences, because it's about a main character who's displaced from her home and from her family and has to learn to cope with all of that. And it is available through OPL in print as an ebook or as a downloadable audiobook. This is Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. Next up, I'm going to talk about Leave the World Behind by Alman Ruman. This book follows two families who are forced to come together as they face some kind of apocalyptic event, which they aren't quite sure about. No one really knows anything about it. There's a prevailing sense of dread as we see these flawed characters come to terms with the fact that nothing in their lives will ever be the same again. So this is a very 2020 book. I got big 2020 vibes off of it. It really captured what so many of us were feeling last year and into this year. It can be used for the reading challenge as a book told from multiple points of view. And it's available through OPL in all formats, including as a book club bag. So if you want to get together with some friends and talk about how 2020 was and remember 2020 all in our hearts, this is a great book for that. This is Leave the World Behind by Alman Ruman. Next up, I am going to talk about The Final Girl Support Group. This is by one of my favorite authors. His name is Grady Hendrix. It's a very recent release. I was lucky enough to snag an advance copy. It came out recently. I don't have one to throw over my shoulder because it's that new. Hendrix is known for exploring horror subgenres and using them to do some amazing character work with women protagonists, as well as keeping you up and turning pages at 4 a.m. This time, he's taking on the slasher subgenre. So if you're a big fan of movies like Friday the 13th or Halloween, this is a good one for you. It's about the survivors decades later when they're all in group therapy. And then there's a bit of mystery as their past comes back to haunt them, their pasts. And you have to kind of try to figure out whose past exactly is coming back and why it's imitating other people's pasts. It's also a very good book if you're into gore like I am. So don't eat it while eating dinner. But it's a very, very good Halloween read since we're coming up on spooky season. It's available in OPL in print, as an ebook, and as a downloadable audiobook. This is the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. Next up, I am going to talk about a horror classic. This is The Damnation Game by the legendary Clive Barker. It's a book about the little people who get caught in the middle of a Faustian bargain between a reclusive millionaire and a mysterious psychic gambler. What follows is a bleak and gruesome descent into madness that keeps you turning the pages and up all night. The psychic elements get abstract enough that it's weird, but not so abstract that you can't follow the plot anymore, which can be a problem with some books with the psychic elements. And it can be used for the reading challenge as a book told from multiple points of view. It's available in print. This is The Damnation Game by Clive Barker. Next up, I am going to talk about the graphic novel adaptation of Slaughterhouse-Five, originally by Kurt Vonnegut, but adapted by Ryan North and illustrated by Albert Montes. This adaptation does a fantastic job at using the new medium to enhance the story and balances both the darkness and humor in the tone of the original. Just remember, you can't spell Slaughterhouse-Five without laughter. The art really does a marvelous job at capturing the character of Billy Pilgrim getting unstuck in time. See right here, you have him in 1 year, you have this little purple transition panel, and then you immediately have him in a different year. You also have like the bombing of Dresden, done like a storyboard and a screenplay. And here's something that you can't get in the original either, just fantastic use of color and sound effects with the onomatopoeia. It is an amazing graphic novel, and I love being able to show pictures from it like I can't on the book drop. So this book is available in OPL and print because it is a graphic novel adaptation, and it is of Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five by Ryan North and illustrated by Albert Montes. Next up, I am going to get depressing. I'm going to talk about a nonfiction book. This is The Jakarta Method by Vincent Bevins, who is a journalist with the Washington Post. It is a very thoroughly researched and disturbing account of the atrocities committed by the CIA during the Cold War, including enabling the Indonesian government to kill 1 million civilians for being communists or suspected communists. This book doesn't just talk about the politicians and military forces working to orchestrate these events. It also talks about the people as they're affected on the ground and how their lives are upended if they even still have them at the end of this. It also looks at the long-term consequences and how it affected global politics going forward. It's available in OPL and print. This is The Jakarta Method by Vincent Bevins. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite books of last year. This is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I am, bookending this with some good science fiction and fantasy by some amazing Black authors. This is an incisive fantasy, and it uses a very large and diverse cast to not only embody, but personify New York City coming together to face a cosmic and existential threat. The characters each become avatars for each of the 5 boroughs who must protect New York from the extra-dimensional woman in white. The words sing on the page and really give the reader a lot to think about weighty topics such as solidarity, gentrification, and the nature of cities themselves. I'd recommend it a lot for fans of writers like China Miéville or Fritz Leiber, who really write very, weighty and thought-provoking science fiction and fantasy. It can be used for the reading challenge as a book told from multiple points of view, a book that won an award, and as a book from the 2020 top shelf. We have it available in all formats except for Book Club Bag. This is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. All right, thank you. I'm done.
Thanks, David. I'm going to bring up our last book talker, Maggie. Oh, hang on, Maggie. Sorry. Maggie, you're muted. Just 1 second, folks. Maggie, I can't unmute you. Uh-oh, we lost her. Give us 1 minute, folks. I'm going to see if Maggie comes back in. While she's getting situated, I just will talk about some stuff I was going to talk about at the end. So you probably seen the link to the custom reading list in the chat. So you can request books from any of these book talkers. If you really liked their recommendations, they can make a list just for you, or you can also just ask for any librarian to do it for you. And Maggie's back, so I'm gonna pass it over to her.
So this is just kind of perfect because the last book bash we had, I was just an elderly person who didn't understand how this works. And I sat here on screen, like fixing my lipstick and doing this because I thought the green screen was like, I thought it was like behind, like you guys couldn't see me. So it's great that this happens this time. So hello, everybody. My name is Maggie. I'm an outreach specialist with Omaha Public Library. I feel like there's 2 things you know about me before I get into my books. The first is that I am the parent to what my pediatrician assures me is a 2-year-old human child. It feels kind of like a semi-domesticated raccoon lives in my home. So I consume almost all of my books through downloadable audiobooks. So almost everything I'm going to give you tonight comes in an audiobook format, or specifically the downloadable ones. There's a couple exceptions, but I'm a big believer that an audiobook narrator can make or break a book. I am only going to give you audiobook narrators who I think do an excellent job. So hopefully you do too. The second thing you need to know about me, I feel like I live a life of being kind of an undercover garbage person. I am very into TikTok, and I get a lot of my book recommendations from there. So if you are not on TikTok getting your book recommendations, you are missing out. You should get on there. I will let you know if it was a TikTok recommendation as we go forward. So to start with, something that is probably not in that vein is, oh, on my side, it's here. It's Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This was a beautiful book all about the son of William Shakespeare, who was named Hamnet. And that is not a mistype. He had a son named Hamnet. And spoiler alert from 400 years ago, the real Hamnet died in childhood. He was, they estimate somewhere between 10 and 15 when he passed. The book takes place in 2 timelines. The first being the origin of the love story between William Shakespeare and his is a little bit of a mystic. She was semi-orphaned, fairly young, and her mother was the same way. She was a healer in their little village, and people would come to her with all of their physical ailments or just wanting guidance because they felt like she could kind of see things that they couldn't. So it's about their little love story of them getting married and having children. And it's a beautiful, heartbreaking, wonderful love story. And it's great. The second storyline that appears in this book is actually the first thing we see. And it's Hamnet waking up one day and finding his twin sister, Judith, actively dying of the plague. And the family starts the process of trying to call William from London, where he is working with his Globe Shakespeare Company, back to their home in Stratford-upon-Avon, and everyone converging on the home, preparing for the death of Judith, not realizing what's actually going to be coming. This was a great book. This was a really good audiobook. I will say the narrator does a really beautiful job on this one. So this is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, and I love it. This one is available in print book club kit, ebook, and an e-audiobook. My next book is Heartland. It is a nonfiction book by Sarah Smarsh, and is kind of all about being the working poor. There are a number of books that are kind of like this, but what drew me to this book specifically is the focus on being working poor in the Midwest. This book takes place in the small towns in the Wichita area, so it's very nearby. It felt very relevant. I feel like the Midwestern poverty and working poor experience is a very unique experience. I feel like you can't necessarily compare it to other parts of the country. This was a really moving, touching book. She really didn't leave any closets unopened. She kind of let everything out there in a way that I really, really admired. The author does narrate this book, and I think she was the perfect choice for it. She puts so much heart into it. This was a great book. If you have any interest in Evicted by Matthew Desmond or Nickel and Dimed by who I think is Barbara Emmerich, and I might be saying her last name incorrectly, but if you liked either of those books, I highly recommend Heartland. And that is available in print, book club kit, ebook, e-audio, and traditional audiobook if you want to like get the CD. How fun. My next book. So one of my favorite genres I can probably describe as British people murdering each other. Like your Lisa Jewells, that's my jam. I love that. I describe this book as the cousin of that genre, which is Australians murdering each other. So an only daughter, a young woman gets arrested. She is caught stealing. They take her into the police station, and while she's there and preparing to be, processed, somebody comes up and says, "Oh my God, you're Beck Winter. We've been looking for you for 10 years. Oh my God, it's Beck Winter. It was this crazy missing girl case." And she's like, "Yeah, that's totally me. I'm Beck Winter." And so she starts to kind of assume this girl's life just enough to give herself just enough time to kind of skedaddle and get out of there. Beck's parents come to the police station and they're like, it has to be you. It's her. It's Beck. Oh my gosh. Everybody's so happy to be reunited. They take her home. It's getting a little more complicated to get herself out of this situation, but she still tries to make those plans. But something starts to happen. She starts to kind of find hints and clues about what was happening in the last few days that Beck was around. In her diary, she talks about getting really weird messages, waking up and finding blood in her bed, just really eerie, awful things happening to her, getting injured, but not really remembering how she got injured. So our narrator starts to realize that the real Beck might have been murdered, and actually it might have been one of these people in the town who's been welcoming her with such open arms. So somebody in this town is looking at her like, "Hey, I murdered you. What are you doing here?" This was a great book. I feel like I love this genre, but I especially love ones that can surprise me at the ending. And I will say this ending completely floored me. I did not see it coming. So this is Only Daughter. This is a fun one for you. It is only available in an audiobook form. How fun. If you haven't done audiobooks yet, this should be a good one. So this is Only Daughter by Anna. I'm going to butcher this. Anna Snoextra? Anna Snoextra. That's what I'm going to go with. My next book. Oh, it's another Grady Hendrix. David is a big time Grady Hendrix fan, and he's actually the one that got this on my radar, but this was a TikTok recommendation. Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. I have never read a book like this. This is a great, great book. This is a book that I did read in person because the print format is very unique. I don't know how you would do this book in an audiobook form. So essentially there's a store called Orsk, and it is a American knockoff of IKEA. And it's so inauthentic that they even have the Swedish sounding names for their items that they sell, even though it is completely American. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're working with. So the store is experiencing a rash of vandalism, that they show up and just things are in disarray. Every single night, something happens. Things are going crazy. They can't see anything on security cameras. So the manager tasks a little group of employees, little plucky group of employees, to stay overnight to see if they can catch whoever has been doing this. And what they uncover about the land the store sits on is horrific. So this was a really, really cool book. I say you kind of need the print copy because there's like little fold out pieces. It really looks almost like an IKEA catalog. Like there's like an order sheet and everything. There's a lot of things that make this a great book to read in person, or maybe like an ebook. I don't know how you would do this book in audiobook. So David says, don't read Grady Hendrix while you're trying to eat dinner. I say do. How many experiences do we have in the world? Try reading this while you're eating dinner. I recommend this book for anybody who likes Shaun of the Dead, NBC's Superstore, or just feeling like a little bit anxious before you go to bed at night. And that one is available, like I said, in print and ebook form. Next up, I have, Unwell Women. Ooh, this is another nonfiction book that was absolutely fascinating and completely horrific and so frustrating that we even have to write about this. This is a history of women in medical history, but not just that. It's all about the long history of misdiagnosis and mistreatment in the medical world. We start in ancient Greece, which I'll give you one little preview. One of my favorite parts of this book was learning all about a syndrome that they called wandering womb. And it was the idea that a woman's uterus could detach and then just float around her body. And it could be the cause of so many ailments. So I found that to be both hilarious and awful, but it was one of my more memorable parts of this book. It goes all the way into modern medicine and things that are happening right now, some more well-known than others, but this was a great book if you have any interest in A, medical history, or B, women. This is a no-brainer. This was a great book. And Well Women by Eleanor Cleghorn. And this one is only available right now in print. It just came out. Guys, I saved my favorite one for last. I've been so excited. I finished this book and I knew that this was going to be, I knew this was going to be one of my book bash picks, but I knew this was going to be my last book that I talked about. So what do I say about The Hating Game by Sally Thorne? This was a TikTok pick. I was really into chick lit in the early 2000s when I just graduated high school. And I don't like the term chick lit, but I feel like people know what I'm talking about when I say it. So that was a big thing for me. I, at a certain point, was like, no, I'm a woman now and I'm serious and I'm not going to read those books. And then this book came up so often on my recommended reads on TikTok that I was like, all right, fine, I'll give it a shot. Let's see what's happening. I have checked this book out 3 times since I finished it. It's been under a year. I need to just buy it at this point, but it's great. So I said earlier that one of my favorite genres is British people murdering each other. Like there's been a murder. Well, in this book, there's been a merger. So in this book, Joshua and Lucy are 2 assistants working at a publishing firm together, and they can't stand each other. They nitpick, they get into little squabbles. They like to kind of set each other up for like tiny little failures in front of each other's bosses. It's a very tit for tat kind of relationship. Until one day, Lucy and Joshua are in the elevator together and he hits the emergency button and she thinks he is going to like slug her. Things have been getting bad lately, but he doesn't slug her. He kisses her right on the lips. Oh my gosh. It's such a fun book. This book gave me all of the good feelings of a 90s romantic comedy, which is to me like top tier romantic comedy. There's a lot of twists and turns. This is also going to be a movie coming out soon, which I personally can't wait to see. This book is fun. It's light. It's flirty. It's a little bit smutty. It's so much fun. 10 out of 10. I recommend The Hating Game if you like any of those things. This book comes in print, ebook, and e-audio. And I loved the audiobook version. The narrator was very, very good on this one in particular. So that is all my books. Thank you so much. Yay.
Thank you, Maggie. Okay, folks. And we're back. Give me one sec. Okay. Let the book talkers know in the chat how they did. Let them know what you're excited about. Before we get to our prizes, I want to talk about Omaha Reads. So if you are not familiar with Omaha Reads, every year we ask the community to nominate and then vote on one book that they think all of Omaha should read and discuss. This year, we're very excited. It's You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey, Crazy Stories About Racism by Amber Ruffin and Lacey Lamar. Hopefully, you know Amber and Lacey are both from Omaha. So you can put that book on hold in our catalog now. Our programming starts in September. On September 2nd at 6 p.m., we're going to have a virtual author visit with Amber and Lacey, which we're very excited about. So get to our website to register for that event. It will be on Crowdcast just like this one. Okay, let's do prizes, folks. Okay, we've got 10 giveaways. I'm going to start with book bundles. So first book bundle goes to Kate Carlson. Second book bundle is Courtney. Courtney, I'm going to spell your last name, especially because I got 2 winners that are Courtney's with K's. So Courtney, last name Kopietz. You have a book bundle. Margaret, I'm also going to spell your last name Trauernich. You also have a book bundle. Debbie Burchard, I believe, is also a book bundle winner. And Courtney Kaiser is also a book bundle winner. We have 3 $25 gift cards to the Bookworm. So that is Mercy Regan, Jerry Chase, and Lauren Allen. And then last 2 prizes are Kylie Dorner, has $25 to Dundee Book Company, and Cheryl Hunt also has $25 to the Dundee Book Company. So we'll be contacting you. I'll contact all the winners via email to let them know, just in case you missed it here. But also we'll be sending you those prizes however you designated in the survey. So before we leave, please drop in the chat which book you are most excited about that you heard from this evening. Our book talkers, this is a little competition, so they don't win anything except just to get to know that they made people the most excited. So drop your favorite title in the chat before you leave. And thank you all for joining us this evening. And I see Carl from the Bookworm made us I think a buying guide. Thank you, Carl. That's amazing. If you miss this or want to rewatch it or share it with your friends, you can revisit the playback just at the same link. So it'll be on that website basically forever. So come back if you missed anything. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.